What is up? It is Wednesday night, so it's a run night. And a little bit of different venue, just because my neighbors seem to be watching something, and it is incredibly loud in my living room. Semi-perturbing, but also it can be overcome. It being a run night, it was a run night in which I did my first tempo run, actually since the race. Actually, probably quite a bit before the race because I was sick there for a week or two before it and was really trying to recover and then tapered into the race. So the ankle is still a little tender. It was tender climbing last night, but from a run perspective, I pushed it pretty hard, really, probably too hard, if I'm being honest, for a tempo run or a threshold run. And really, I don't know. I haven't checked my watch stats to see how the run ended up. But neither here nor there. I'd say it was a pretty good day. I also have been thinking about this video series a lot. And I think I'm kind of missing the mark for what I intend to do. Ultimately, what I'd like to do is share and document some of the things that happen, I guess, day to day, and how I handle them and how I'm growing and the actions I'm taking that are leading me to an improved version of myself. And a predominant portion of my life is going to be my professional career. I'm an operational director for a manufacturing facility down here in Anderson, South Carolina. It's part of a bigger enterprise, but I have the opportunity to grow and lead a facility of currently around 70 people that I've been able to take and, from an operational perspective, increase the capacity to about 70% to double what it was when I got here. It's through a couple different means, but really I'll talk about some of the challenges that I face today in particular and what I'm going to do about them and what I've learned just here and there. Try to keep the videos around the same length. I just want to make a subtle switch. I think it's just subtle because everything that I've documented at this point is thought processes and things that I'm working through, and it's just never in the moment. So it just feels really disconnected. It doesn't feel inauthentic or anything like that. It still maintains a level of authenticity. Let's use that word instead. And I think that the lessons are there. I just want to connect them more with day-to-day and real-life experiences. I've done a poor job necessarily of brainstorming and understanding the experience that I need to connect it to probably make the story be more impactful and really just convey the message that I'm trying to convey. So I had three things that I wrote down from today. Three things that really happened that I thought were the bigger parts of the day. The first of which is there's a project that is currently going on that I would deem, without mincing words, a failure. And unfortunately, we're about 3 weeks behind, and it's incredibly impactful to the goal that we had set forth. There's a couple factors that I see and own from this. The first of which, I have to own my responsibility in it and the role that I could have played. I placed a lot of trust in the project manager, and I think what I'm learning, or what's just being demonstrated, is there's probably some skills that are lacking there. And the way to handle and approach things as they pass deadlines, the expectation hasn't been set. It really seems. Or the expectation hasn't been learned. It's one or the other. And really getting stuck in understanding which one it is, I give a lot of grace in regards. It can be a chaotic environment, and it is not necessarily the best incubator for learning, and especially being thrown into quite a sizable project on a relatively tight timeline, incorporating new technology and new pieces of equipment into our facility is a pretty significant challenge. So, all that being said, what I think, two things. The immediate action I'm going to take, to try to resolve the issue is to, one, make sure that everything is in motion that can be in motion today. The things that are behind, we're going to try to get on back. You can't get them back on track. There's no recovering that. But get them onto a timeline in which we can be able to prepare and plan all the parallel pieces that'll allow us to transition as effectively as possible and in the quickest fashion possible to be able to optimize and maximize the other side of the equation. So ultimately, it's the first linchpin in this whole puzzle. And we need to be prepared for when we get that first piece in place to be able to move and to be able to move as aggressively and quickly as possible. So the focus needs to be on that part because we can do that part. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll look back and we'll say all the problems that happened and we'll get stuck in all the things of how we got here. Yet that's not going to take us where we want to go. And so we just waste more time. Out of all the time that's been wasted, we don't need to waste anymore. So let's move past that and let's move on to the next thing. Right now, I'm not going to connect a bunch of corollaries and other ways to interpret this. Hopefully, I assume that you can see and maybe pull out some lessons. This is just what works for me. This is in a very specific context in a sense, but I think they can be generalized. I would say I work this way in a lot of areas of my life. So, good luck. The second, which I would say is a project that's going very well. I'm having the opportunity to expand my facility. And very well is all relative. I think very well in a demonstrable way. I hate that word. I'm so glad I picked it. But it's in a way that on the outside, I think everything looks like it's going really well because we are maintaining timeline. We're actually really not aggressively, but we're being very successful with managing the budget. In fact, I think we are going to have an opportunity to be able to come in under budget, provided that we manage this, or come in right on budget with getting more things out of it. I think a lot of this goes into the preparation of the project and choosing the right partner. We have a third-party contractor that I went through a process of selecting. And I guess that the takeaways that I would say from this, there's no actions that I need to do right now other than to finalize a presentation to give. So 2 big things. I don't know how to select a contractor to run a project like this. Facility expansion, never done it. That's okay. I think it's probably a culmination of other experience, and it's the idea that the way my personality works is I'll put something together and I'll check it. I'll bounce it off of people. I'll say, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of this? At the end of the day, the opinion that matters most to me is probably my own and that it makes sense, but I'm not going to operate in a vacuum. I'm wrong a lot. Or maybe I make a lot of decisions because I'm not really wrong a lot on a percentage basis, I would say. I feel like I'm wrong a lot. But also when I played basketball, I could shoot 70% and I felt like I was dog shit. So it's kind of the way the brain works, right? Negativity bias. Negative events are like something like 10 to 15 to 17 times more impactful from a psychological perspective. So I didn't know what I was doing. No idea. But what I did is I took just a logical look at it and said, hey, what way could this make sense? And I went for it. And I would say that there was a lot of portions which are not just purely objective and definitive. But ultimately, a decision was going to need to be made. And that's one of the takeaways that I would have is just because you don't know, like 100% reliably, like just facts, doesn't mean you can't make an educated decision. And I think decision making is this probably super underrated and not talked about enough skill, I guess I would call it, that when you don't have it, it really hurts your leadership and really hurts your management. And there's not a lot of people that actually just do it. And some of that is learning through error, making decisions and making the wrong ones, and learning from that and then improving your decision-making process. I think I've talked about it on here before, but Clear Thinking is a book I just read that I think is probably the best book I've ever read by describing decision-making and thinking tactics that enable you to make better decisions and enable you to think in a clearer fashion. The book is very aptly named. I don't want to belabor this point, but what I would say is that decision-making is incredibly underrated. Start making decisions. Start being confident in your decisions. And I think it doesn't really matter the context. I think it changes some of the advice that I would probably give, and some advice that I probably got to apply to my own. It isn't about whether or not people like your decisions. And in fact, if people disagree with you, I think that's where the most impactful dialogue comes from. It helps you to ultimately understand the other person better, and ultimately potentially understand the situation or event in which you're making a decision even better, right? It presents different viewpoints. Different viewpoints are incredibly powerful. I think that we misplace that today. We're so concerned with either being right or our ego or whatever factors it might be that we don't really care about the other side. And I would tell you that if you don't understand the other side, then you don't really understand what you're working on. So it's important to try to understand all sides of things and to engage in dialogue when you can't get an understanding with the other side, or there's perspectives that you never even think of. You don't know what you don't know, and that's where you should probably live, is at least understanding what you don't know. The last situation that happened was very frustrating, and I take kind of a win from it by being able to manage my self-control. Somebody was vaping in my shop, and I don't know about you, but you go anywhere, you can't vape inside, right? It's pretty much against rules everywhere. Definitely got to know it's against the rules in the shop. And the response was just, bleh. It wasn't disrespectful, I don't think. I probably took it that way in the moment, but it just seemed like there was no remorse. Like he didn't really give a shit. It really irked me, but instead of responding probably in the way that I really wanted to, I walked away. I went and I reset expectations with my leaders and my manager, and ultimately, I'm going to use it as a coaching opportunity for when things that don't look right happen. Don't just brush them off. Determine and understand what's right and wrong. And the way that we understand what's right and wrong in a professional and organizational context is through policies. Go look it up or ask. Understand how you're able to manage this situation, and don't just excuse yourself from it. It's your responsibility. And so a takeaway from that could definitely be to understand the things that are your responsibility. And if you truly want to grow, I would give the advice that I think on average you should take more responsibility than is probably actually justified. And see what role you could have played. Same way with the project failure in the beginning. It's not my project. Ultimately, I am the ultimate responsibility for the facility, so I will own that. And I will understand that there are things that I could have done differently. I could have required weekly report outs, which at one point I did, and then it was going so well that I stopped them. Then it started to not go well. Well, learning lesson. Weekly report outs all the way until it's fully complete. Can't trust something until it's been proven. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to prove it yet. So, setting expectations, resetting expectations, doing this exercise a couple times, and then holding people to those expectations. It's the fundamentals of management. Am I getting what I expect or not? And when I'm not, what do I do about it? There's got to be some action in there. So ultimately, I really appreciate being able to share these things. And this is just honest documentation of what's happened today and what's going on in my life and some of the takeaways from it and what I've been able to grow in a professional context, and really what's just helped me personally as well. Your professional life and your personal life and some of the things that you experience, it's all just you as an individual. And you can segment it as much as you want. But really, it's still just you. So I'm going to wrap this up. It's been long enough. Hopefully there's some takeaways in there that you can find. If I wasn't able to make them, I hope to sharpen this up over time. I really appreciate it. And remember, you can't lose if you don't quit.